And I'm going to introduce Bob Staples, who is the newest member of our team as an Academic Instructional Support Specialist. He is going to host our webinar for today. So without further ado, Bob, if you would like to go ahead and start, and we'll check in a little bit later with everyone and make sure you don't have any questions. If, while Bob is presenting, you would like to offer something in the chat box, please feel free to do so, and I can answer that. Okay, Bob, thank you.
Thank you, Jody. I appreciate it. We're going to start with our tips for online classroom management presentation. Please keep in mind as we get started, people may be entering, and of course, we want to get started right on time. Jody will be working the chat, and that's really helpful, so please be aware of that. Also, if you would check your for any open mic, if you have the talk button operating, if you would mute that would be helpful. If you're on a phone call, if you'd mute your phone, that would be helpful as well. We've had people did a good job at this. After I go through some of the slides, I may pause for a quick question, and if you feel comfortable, you could ask it. Jody may say something, and then we'll go through the slides, and then we'll go to the end, and then what we'll do is we'll have a Q&A session for those people who want to stick around, maybe ask a more detailed question. So just a couple things on the front end. All right, let's get started. The topic is top tips for online classroom management. I do want to say, as a veteran classroom teacher over 20 years, my mission was to try to help bring effective instruction to my students, and that is a process. And there's some things that are helpful. We may talk about 20, 30 things, and you know, you may seem overwhelmed. Oh no, do I have to do all of those 20 things right away? I'd appreciate your desire to do those, but no, it's a process, and we get better and better as we move forward. So no one's expecting perfection here. We're just moving in the right direction. All right, let's get started. One thing to keep in mind, that classroom management is really an essential thing to success. So a person from the trenches, I would simply say there's two components to an effective teacher, and that is knowing the content and instructing it. And there is another part, and that is the classroom management part. In the face-to-face classes, in my undergraduate classes, obviously teaching undergraduate freshmen, there is a huge component on course management. And if I don't do that, I could know more content, but it's not going to have an effect in the real classroom and effective instruction. And that is my mission, effective instruction, and I know that is yours as well. So we want to promote efficiency and effectiveness. In other words, we don't want to waste your time, your valuable time. We want to do those things that help get the mission accomplished, and that's a good thing. We want our students to feel like they can know what to predict in the classroom, and that there is a sense of community with the instructor and with the peer students. And so when I think about this, I think about the things that I did in face-to-face classrooms. Can I put them in the online class? And believe it or not, you can, but it is a different format, and it takes a little bit of experience and intuition to make it happen. But it's also a rewarding experience as well. So there are some things on the front end. All right, a couple questions to answer. How to be an effective facilitator? That's a good question. So in the face-to-face class, sometimes you almost are taking some of the responsibility of learning, it seems like, and delivering it while you're trying to talk to the student. Sometimes you feel like you're a part entertainer, and I know what that feels like. But in this situation, we're trying to be that effective instructor, but we're trying to facilitate the student doing the number one thing that's going to help that person to be successful, and that is simply to be a responsible student. Bottom line, that is it right there. And so our mission is to facilitate that, and we do different things to make that happen. And of course, the other the other part of this is on the student side. How do we keep students engaged? Let me just say, if I had a 5-step formula that would work, I would be a millionaire right now, but I don't. I do know there's a group of things that work: the discussion, emailing, some of the things that we're going to talk about here. These would be things that would help. And I'm sure there's a professor out there that has experienced something with their class and their content that helps students to be engaged, and we want to know it. We want to hear about it. So that's important. Obviously, 2 questions we want to know on the front end as we get into doing our classes. All right, well, obviously the first one is the syllabus. It's sort of a contract between us, the student, and the platform. I've noticed that it's very important to plan it out ahead of time, and I ask my students to print it out. What I do is I make a PDF copy of the platform's syllabus, and then I either send that out or make it available to the student, and that's a good idea. But it does outline your expectations. It can be overdone and it could be underdone, but that is the roadmap, and it's important to do a good job with that. All right, here's another couple points that I think are important. One professor, it's a history professor, I forget his name, but he has his own syllabus. So when you click on syllabus up there at the top, you see his syllabus. Now obviously this person has done this for a while, and he's included the E-Core ideas into his syllabus. And I like that because he made it his own. He owns the course, he owns the content, and that's a very, very good thing. So that would be something to consider after some experience teaching. And as far as some common issues that come up in the syllabus, here's maybe 1 or 2. One would be we would make a mistake if we started asking our students to do something in the class that they have not read about in the syllabus. I know whenever this happened in the face-to-face class, the students that are engaged will say, I don't remember reading that in the syllabus. And then, I have to backtrack and say, well, let's see, next time I teach this class, I need to put that in the syllabus. And I have found out that the better the syllabus reflects what I'm doing, the better the experience is for the students, because they know what to expect. And that will be true for us as well. All right, so any comment or questions on the syllabus? Okay. All right, this is something to consider. The title is Consider Hiding Content. And the purpose is for some professors, they'd like the student to focus in on lesson 1, so they will hide lesson 2, lesson 3, and so forth. That may be a good thing, that may not work. But the idea is to help focus the attention of the student on what's happening right now. One way that I do this is when I set up my discussions, I may have 15 discussions for the students to do through the course of the semester. I will hide, like the second lesson and forward, and then I will let it appear as we go through the discussions following the calendar. I do think there is something to be said for that. So if you want to explore the idea of consider hiding some content, you can. One of the key features in my course I teach math, and I'm going to have that perspective, and that'll help you know where I'm coming from. But the calendar is the key to success in my particular class. So it's a planner. It provides clear directions. And when you set up your calendar, whether you're doing it like I did, this is my example over here on the upper right-hand corner, whether you do it like I did, where I actually went to the calendar and selected items for each day, or whether you are going to the test and your assessments and picking the calendar days and make sure that they are populated in the calendar that the students see on the home page. Whatever way you're doing it, it is extremely important that the students understand the calendar. Now, I have found out from doing this a few times that this way I have of doing the calendar does help the student. And so what I have in my calendar, I just day by day what they could be doing. Now, obviously, there's a little give and take either way, but I tell my students the calendar is the minimum pace of the course. And my quiz opening up and end dates match the calendar. And again, I want to say, I have videos I make and reports to the class that I do once a week with my students, and I will go over the calendar, and I'll write in a picture of the calendar, and the students say that helped them really stay in the class. Now, again, for math, it's important because when you get behind in math, it's over before the third week happened. So I understand that your calendar is, a little related to your particular content. I will say this also, that there is a notification tool on the upper right-hand side of the student homepage where they could have sent to their phone or other device messages from the calendar, and students like that, so that's something to consider as well. But anyway, the calendar is a very important thing, and I hope that that's been a good experience for you and your students. The announcement tool, when I started, and I hate to repeat some of my experiences, but maybe it'll help, I didn't use the announcement tool a lot. And then through the last 3 or 4 times in teaching, I've used it more and more. So the announcement tool on the home page, you could just click to the right and edit, make new announcements, and it really, really is neat. You could use this to reiterate critical information to your students, to highlight it. You could clarify important details. So you're announcing to the student when they visit the home page. Here's an example. It's just one simple example. My students are starting their college algebra, and I made a series of 3 videos on learning the graphic calculator in less than 45 minutes. And so I highlight that link on my home page, and I advertise that a little bit. So I will have to say this is an area that you could have a lot of fun with, and I hope you enjoy doing that, and your students will enjoy that as well. So consider using the announcement tool on the home page. Okay, there's a form in SEADS that has to do with a change request form, and this is about content or things in the class that you maybe as a content expert want to bring to the attention of the course designer, and we want you to document those things. And over a period of time, the person responsible for that particular course will look at it. And I have found improvements have happened by doing that, but it just doesn't happen right away. So when you're driving this car right now, you're on a trip, you'll just have to make note of things and tell your students, be aware of such and such needs a little adjusting, so please be mindful of that. But there's a form available for you in SEADS, and you could use it, and I hope you will take advantage of it, because we want our content to be accurate, and I hope that makes sense. Okay, now here's a little bit of navigating and step-by-step procedures. So when you go to SEADS, now how do you get to SEADS? You go to your home page on the left side at the bottom, faculty forms and so forth. You will see a link to SEADS. I think it stands for Students something Success, okay? I'll get that the next time I talk about it. But there you go, a change request, and you can fill that out, and that'll be helpful. Okay, another part of good online teaching is good use of the discussion board. I will have to say I'm good at this, but I'm not as good as I'd like to be. And this is a way for the students to be able to have that classroom feel, and that is very important to some of our students. They learn through the discussion board. So, like the statement says here, that's the heart of online learning. Obviously, a psychology and a sociology class will probably have or a political class, right now, would have a lot of discussion in the discussion board. And this is where students collaborate with each other, and again, the professor may weigh in and have some things to say as well. I will say how I do the discussion board. I have 2 types of discussions, one going along with the lesson and another one a weekly check-in. And the reason why I do that is I want the students to discuss the content as they go through the content lesson by lesson, and I will provide prompts. And I also want the students to share what's happened with them in their week chronologically wise, and that is the purpose of the weekly check-in. And I grade all of my discussions. I'm not going to say, you know, I don't use a sophisticated rubric, but I do grade them, and the fact that the students know they're being graded, it does help them to be involved on the discussions. Okay, before we leave that, a couple tips, and I know you may have some questions on discussions. Ask open-ended questions. This is so important, open-ended. When, why, how, what. I have found when I start my discussion prompts with those questions, I get more response. Also, another advice I would do is have maybe 5 prompts and ask the students to pick 2 or 3, and that's a good way to have students be involved. I like the second one, ask follow-up questions, to have a thread going in your class. Again, I'm a little weak in this, but I am going to be working on that this semester, where there's some discussions that students will continue their conversation, which is a neat thing. The last one talks about a short turnaround time. So in my course, the students know when the lesson is done and they need to make a discussion. Overall, I try to not wait over 1 or 2 days to grade my discussions. And you know, I'll be happy to share how I actually put the grade number in there. But I do think that's important. And I answer every lesson discussion, but I do not answer every weekly discussion because there's only so much that you could do. But it is important, and I wanted you to be reminded of that. All right, comment or questions on the discussion board tips? Okay. All right. I hope that we are all using email when we're communicating with our students. I guess I probably do 2, 3 or 4 emails a week, and it may be just something very, very short, but the student knows that I'm engaged and they're receiving a message. My students do email me, some more than others, and I try to get a message out to them within 24 hours. It doesn't always work, but I do try to do that, and I refer to the MOU, which has some, you know, some minimum requirements on that. But one thing that's good about the email, you can have a one-to-one conversation going back and forth, and that is always helpful. Okay, so this part about effectively managing your course has to do with what are you going to do without at-risk reports or at-risk students. Just very honest, University of West Georgia, they reached out to more and more folks. We have a lot of people coming to the University of West Georgia, and I realized in my classroom I have more and more of what I would characterize at-risk students. What am I going to do with these students? Well, I got a quick answer. If the instructor doesn't do anything, not much is going to happen with them, and most of them will fizzle away. And we don't want that, especially if that student is a good student for a particular program of study, and that's where they need to be. So here are some essentials with at-risk students. Obviously, it's early identification. It would be a good idea after that first quiz, and I do this, those students who did really well on quiz 1, quiz 2, I really just encourage. I send them an email, say, way to go. But I know in my mind I'm going to have 5 to 10 students that may be in this category at risk. And it's for different reasons, so each person is a bit different. The older adults have a little trouble getting into the, quote, swing of things, but some of the older adults that you may seem, wow, they're not really working that hard. They really are working, and by the time at the end of the course, they may be some of your better students. And I think faculty members who are listening to this understand what I'm saying, And that's very important to remember. They're all different. Being proactive, I just want to say what needs to be said. The instructor is the first line of defense. The instructor is the most important person in addressing this issue, but it doesn't mean the instructor has to do it all by his or herself, and that is very important to keep in mind. And that's one of the advantages of teaching for eCore. There are tutoring options available and counseling services for the student. And then, the last one here is report in SEADS. SEADS basically is the old school student success team, basically. But there's more that's happening in the success team that we want to know about and that we can utilize, so just be mindful of that. All right, so what we want to do is you could track your students. There's different ways. Here's one way. You can go to the class list, and then you could click on View Progress. I have done this, and hopefully others as well, and you could see how the student is doing, and you can look at their grades. So be mindful of that. That's one way to get information about your student. To report a student that is at risk, this is a very important step. I would probably call this one of the top 10 things of being a good eCore teacher. And probably the most important thing to say about it is when to report the student. And my advice is report after you have done a few things yourself. And that is very important. So again, you go into SEADS, you click on the students, there's a name right here, and you click on the link here to make a report. And let me talk about this screen for a while. So if you have done this, you're familiar with the screen, and let me give you some do's and don'ts. Please report your student. And there's some questions. Did you reach the student through your efforts? And if you're like me, when you see that yes or no, that's just a reminder. I should have tried to call that student or contact that student, and I would do that. As a matter of fact, if you called or contacted that student before this particular point, you got good positive energy flowing to try to do something with the student. All right, so your efforts in assisting the student, and this is very straightforward. I click what applies. Now this last one right here, it says the student's contacted by me, and you don't need to get involved. I just want you to know about the student. Well, normally by the time we're using this report, you've already contacted them, and these folks need to know about the student. The primary issue, again, these are very straightforward things, and I have used this many, many times in my work with my students. Of course, you're going to hit submit, and then you got that message out. All right, so this particular presentation is about how to be effective in working with your students. Yes, we need to know the content, obviously, but the course management part is really very crucial. And being reminded of the things that we talked about here is very, very important as well. Now let me see. We're going to take some questions in a minute, but I want to go back to this screen, and I want to mention that obviously we don't want to send multiple reports if we don't see a student, turning it around. The report is not causing the student to be addressed. It's what the student's doing with the staff and you, and what they're doing with their own life and their responsibility and so forth. So we do want to, work together on this situation. And I would really try to avoid making my first reports the last 2 weeks of the semester. I would have something out halfway through and maybe 3/4 way through, and that will be a good idea. So remember that good teaching and effective instruction and good management, it is a process. We never are where we really want to be if we're concerned about being an effective instructor. We're good, we're getting better. That's the kind of attitude to have. But also I do want to say, by trying to be effective, it's also very rewarding working with your students. And I cannot say this enough. It is an honor working with each of the faculty members here with our eCourse students, because we're reaching a lot of people where we may not be able to have reached before, and many of these people are really, really great students wanting to do something with education in their life. And you are a big reason for their success, and we want you to know that. Also, we'll send a link out to this video so others could see it. And please remember to email us. And if we don't respond right away, there's a reason. It's not because we haven't saw the emails, because we want to give you the best answer, and an answer that addresses the real question and so forth. So try to be patient with us in that. But we are here for you, and we want you to know that. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Jody to see if she has anything that she wants to add, and then what we'll do is we'll open up for questions and comments.
Okay, thank you, Bob. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. If there are some questions, we can take those after.